Welcome to our third episode of our podcast, Who Lied to You? And on this particular episode, we're going to bust the myth that stress and trauma are only caused by major and big events in our lives. Join me, Flavia Rita Babide,
and Jocelyn Kajumba
as your hosts on this podcast. So I would just take it to my co-host, Jocelyn. And as a neuropsychologist and also a trauma coach, we are today talking about stress and trauma and the small and big things that cause stress and trauma. So just take us through. We're going to have a little bit of a discussion here. Take us through those small events that may have happened in our lives earlier, could be in our childhood, could be along the way as we're growing up, that we probably minimized back then, but now they've crept up on us and are showing up in our lives as trauma carried from way back.
Well, I'll talk about my own personal experiences.
Yeah.
With work, I have noticed that in most cases when I'm going to, let's say, have a big meeting or when I'm going to do a presentation, there's sometimes I get sweaty palms, there's sometimes my stomach pains me. But also, when I'm in spaces of speaking, I get mute, something we call selective mutism, because at a certain point in childhood, when I wanted to express myself, someone told me, "Don't talk. What do you have to say? What do you know?" I was shut down. I was neglected. So in these moments when, let's say, I'm in a meeting or I have to present, I notice that my body is going back to the 4-year-old or the 5-year-old who was being told, "Don't talk. What do you have to say?" So things like that, and that has to do with within the work environment. But then talk about relationships. There are different types of relationship styles. There's a anxious style, but then there's also avoidance style. So the anxious style is when, someone is too clingy, someone wants to be validated all the time, they want to be told, they want to be affirmed. So those are some of the examples that someone who has the anxious style goes through during a relationship. But with avoidant, this is the type of relationship where someone, does not deal with the issues. Let's say things like, you don't call me back. And then I don't want to find out, why didn't you call me back? Things like, you had an argument with someone and I was watching, but then I don't want to know what was the argument about because I'm avoidant, because I know if I ask, you're probably going to lie to me, you're probably going to dismiss me. So such things in your work relationship, but also in relationships as well, love relationships and friendship relationships, these are some of the signs that creep up for us to know that you're actually traumatized.
Oh yeah, that is very well said. I think as Flavia, I've also realized that sometimes the things that I do are just trauma responses to the things that I went through while growing up. Personally, being a first daughter in a family of 5, I was left to take care of my siblings, and now I've grown up to become so hyper independent because I'm not anyone who used to take care of them, so I can do these things on my own. I've also realized that back then I used to be a loner in a family of 5 children. My 2 brothers were very close, and then my 2 young sisters were close. So me being a middle child, I never really had anyone I used to be attached to. And so I remember I used to be very attached to my dad because the rest of them were very close to each other. Yes. And so I've realized that in my adulthood, it has crept up on me as a very independent person. I know that if I set my mind to doing something, I can get it done on my own. It's now after going through a burnout and going through all these other stresses that I've realized now I need to step back a little bit and let people also do what they need to do, help me out and all those kind of things. So I totally understand when you say that these things indeed creep up on us. But these are small things that we used to never really think that they would creep up on us
Yeah.
in our adulthood. I've also heard of mothers who become very unattached to their children because of the pain they went through during childbirth and all those kind of things. So usually we think that it's big events such as the death of a loved one, loss of a job, maybe going through a bad relationship. Doesn't have to be these small, tiny relationships that may end, or maybe even friendships. We see them as very small, and we don't think that they will actually affect us
Yeah.
later. But however small, they still affect us.
They do.
Also, the big things indeed affect us.
Mm.
So it is our call to you to notice both the small things and the big things that are stressing you in your life right now that will definitely creep up on you later. And if they don't creep up on you, they'll probably creep up on your children around you. You'll pass it on unknowingly or knowingly. So it is important to notice that there are the small and big things that cause stress and trauma. It's not just the big events.
Maybe just to add on, something about trauma is that it does not need to happen to you. If you saw it, it can still affect you.
Be registered in your mind as trauma.
Yes,
Or
because we see that now children from 0 to 7 years, 0 to 2 years, these are children who can't speak, but these are children who feel. They feel their senses are very active. So they download a lot that happens around the environment. So these children have to be protected with the environment that is provided. Their caregivers need to be equipped with ways on handling trauma at a given time. Because it's not just, like I say, it's not just what happens to you, but also what you see, what you hear. All your senses are being affected.
yes, and then I wanted us to talk about how we relate our relationships, our marriages, and all that kind of thing. I've noticed or noted that in certain relationships, you'll notice that the woman will love the man the way she saw her mom loving her dad. Or if a man grew up in a home where he sees probably his dad beating his mother, it will come up later in their marriage, right? So I wanted you to tell me, I don't know if that is also something that can be called a traumatic response or something of that kind. Is it trauma when you see someone, a husband beating the wife because they've probably seen it back in their home, or a woman doing what she does in her new home because she saw it back home? Could that be something as well?
Absolutely, because we cannot show what we don't know. So what you see is what you give. There are some people that I know who go for the bad boys, not because the bad boy is the best, it looks good on paper and all that, but because they're looking for that, the roughness and the edginess in the relationship, because they were traumatized, they were beaten, they were abused, and they look for the edginess within the guy. So when they see a good guy, a guy who shows up, a guy who talks to them, a guy who loves them genuinely, they can't recognize that. So they'll be like, what are you to
be fair.
Like, who sent you? Who sent you? So definitely that creeps up in the relationships that we have moving on.
So then, how would I notice that I'm traumatized? Or how do you tell when you're traumatized? Because I think for me, I lose track. I don't know. Well, I can tell when I'm stressed. I have failed to find out when I am actually traumatized and my reaction is just trauma.
Yes. Our bodies are always having our conversations with us. Have you ever noticed, like, when you want to go to the bathroom, pee actually increases? Yeah. So our bodies are always having communications with us. So, there is sometime maybe you're having a conversation with someone and then they say something and then you're like, but is that true? Is that? That is your body recognizing trauma. That, at a certain point in time, we were affected by this in this way. Things like when you're in a relationship and then, you catch yourself asking, was I just lied to? Was I just played? You know, sometimes there are those quick thoughts that run through your mind, but then you're like, you bypass it.
Yeah.
Things that we call bypassing thoughts.
Mm.
So you bypass it, but then actually it is your body telling you that, you know, this is a traumatic event that you need to deal with.
Mm.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Mm.
That is very eye-opening, I should say, because we really, our bodies, like you've said, really communicate, and we neglect a lot of things.
Yeah.
And yet I found that the more you neglect these and don't work on them, your body stores and remembers,
Yeah.
and there's payback time. There is surely payback time.
Mm.
So I wonder now, if you know that you are going through a traumatic experience, what are the quick solutions to fix that situation? And what are those things that we should probably incorporate into our lives to help us overcome trauma and all those kind of things?
So one of the quick fixes I give to my clients are things like breathing exercises. Just take a deep breath and sit, because in that moment, your body is back to the traumatic you, probably who is 7 years old, 8 years old. But sitting down and actually breathing brings your body into the rest and repair mode. And when you look at it from the brain side of things, the part of the brain that does the thinking and reasoning, that part is shut down when you're traumatized. Because when you are traumatized and you're going through the traumatic experience again, the part of the brain that does the thinking and reasoning is shut down. So there is no way that you're going to think clearly in that moment. So you've heard of people saying things like, you know, I'm talking, he can't hear me.
Yeah.
He just can't hear me.
Mm.
He literally cannot hear you, or she cannot hear you, because the part of the brain that does the thinking is shut down. And the part that is active is the memory part of the brain, the one that is thinking of the traumatic experience. Yes.
We've said so much about trauma. We have really said so much about trauma. However, for someone out there, for the benefit of someone out there, what is trauma actually? What is trauma? Shed some more light on it, and to just bring some people on board. Maybe someone has just joined us,
Yeah.
and they need to know what we're talking about.
So trauma is an emotional response to high stressful events in our body. And some of the things that cause trauma right from our childhood are emotional neglect, parental neglect, separation of the parents, conflict, drama in the household. All these things are stored in our body, because things like parental neglect, let's say you're in a house of 5 children and mom likes the 2, dad likes the 2, and then this one child just does not have the love of any of the parents, but also does not have love of the siblings, but also does not have the love of the, let's say, the caretaker or the maid, because maybe she's watching movies and all that. So that is parental neglect. When you talk of things like emotional abuse, this has to do with you going to your parent or you going to any elder in the environment, and you want to share maybe what you're feeling, your pain, and they tell you things like, you know, your parents, deal with it.
Yeah.
It's not that big of a deal. It's not a big of a deal. So things like that are things that we definitely need to look out for, especially within our children, but also with our mothers, because stress leaks through the placenta into the child.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So a child can be born into this world with high levels of stress,
Yeah.
just because the mom was stressed.
Yes, that's true.
Yes. So, what stressful conditions are you going through out there? Tell us through the comment section.
So, dear mothers, as you've heard, stress leaks through our systems into our babies, but not only when they are inside us, even when they're out here. We have several ways we pass on this trauma and stress to them. We need to protect ourselves first to be able to protect our children. If we don't deal with our stress, that I am sure of, that I'll push this stress onto my children.
True.
That's why you go home and find a mother high on cortisol, shouting at the children, shouting at the helpers, shouting at whoever they come across, or maybe stressing the husband too. So it is important that we look inward, work on ourselves, so that we don't pass on this stress and trauma to our children and everyone else around us. I would want to know, when I experience a traumatic situation, takes me back in memory of maybe what happened in childhood, or maybe what someone did to me, or what a friend said, and all these kind of things. What are the effects? What are the effects, the deadly effects that I can experience? Even if it doesn't get to deadly, really, what are those small effects that can come up and get to the bad side of things?
So the effects on our bodies that are caused because of trauma are things like what we call behavioral issues, like drinking too much, being workaholic, different types of addictions. Addiction is not only substance, it's not only drinking, it can also be sex, can also be work, like I just said. The other issues that can be caused are mental health issues, things like depression, anxiety, things like you can have suicide ideation. There are so many, really. Then we have the physical effects, which cause diseases. So we have chronic illnesses, neurological disorders, things like autism, things like epilepsy, things like dyspraxia. These are disorders that happen in the brain due to the trauma. Yes, that is happening in the body. Yes.
All right. So how can we protect ourselves against trauma and its effects on our bodies? Can you take us through how that would look like? If I know that I've been traumatized, but I don't want it to go any further than that, how can I deal? How can I deal with whatever situation? Yes.
Well, first of all, you have to notice that we are, in some way or another, we are all traumatized. So learning to deal within our own selves, learning to seek healing, talk to a trusted friend. Let's let the healing begin with ourselves. Because once we are healed, then we can heal the environment around us. And also, if you're not healed, then you're going to pass that down to the next generation. So things like going for therapy, things like good nutrition, things like having good sleep. The thing about sleep is that there's a certain system in the brain. So when you're awake, it is sleeping. And when you're sleeping, it's awake. So when you're sleeping, it cleans out the junk that you've got during the day. So it could be doubt, burnout, all these things that are stored in the brain. So if we do not get enough sleep, then definitely we are going to have mental health issues, you're going to have insomnia. And the cleaning, let me call it the cleaning crew of the brain, takes about 8 hours. That's why they normally say it's good for you to sleep for 8 hours, because the cleaning crew in the brain does the cleaning to those 8 hours. Yes.
So it's very important to sleep.
It is very important to sleep. It is very important to eat well, because the right nutrients boost your immunity. And your immunity can fight off these chronic diseases, can fight off mental health issues. The main thing, the most important thing is environment. Who are you surrounding yourself around? What is, because environment is very toxic. Our bodies are like sponges. They soak in whatever it is around them. Have you ever noticed that when you go to, let's say, an event, and then the people around you are, you go and you're like, I'm just going to go for probably 5 minutes and then I'll leave. But then you go there, everyone is hyper, everyone is having fun, and then you also join in.
And so, let me just stay here. I won't even go for the next thing.
Exactly. So because the environment has soaked you in.
Yes.
So be aware of your environment. Be aware of the people that you spend time with. Be aware of what you scroll.
Yes.
On your phone.
Is very important.
be aware with the information that you're putting in.
Yes,
Yes.
that's true.
Yes.
So the environment is very major. So is that the biggest weapon we have against trauma?
No, I think it's emotions. The way we handle our emotions, because there are certain situations that I personally have noticed where two twins, identical, and they've grown up in the same environment, but then they can tackle life issues differently.
Yes, sir.
Have you seen them as well?
Definitely.
You know, yes. So definitely it's how our bodies handle emotions, and how do emotions creep in our bodies? It's our thoughts. Begins with our thoughts. So what thoughts are you sending to your mind? And your mind is going to send that signal to your body as an emotion. So what thoughts are you thinking? What emotions are you feeling? Those would be the biggest weapons
Against trauma.
against trauma. Yes.
Okay.
Because toxic thoughts create toxic
Result.
results, and
Yeah.
good thoughts create
Good
good
results.
results. Yes.
All right. So that's very, very major, definitely. I know that if you work on your mind, if you work on your inner person, there's a lot of things that you can deal with in this world.
Yeah.
And so even if you see something that once traumatized you, you have the power to control
Yeah.
what goes on
Yes.
inside you. It may trigger it, but it doesn't have to be the same every other time. There's a way you can combat that through controlling our emotions and the environment, like you've said.
Yeah.
So we need to be aware of the things that we surround ourselves with, the people that we're surrounding ourselves with, the news we watch, the social media accounts we follow,
Yes.
and all these things. What are we feeding our spirit? What are we feeding our souls? What are we feeding our minds? It's very important. And so we need to guard ourselves against the trauma and all the stress that there is. But allow me to take you back a little bit. We started from the fact that small events, just like big events happening in our lives, cause both the stress and the trauma that we experience. So we shouldn't just be focused on the big events, thinking that they're the only ones that will cause us stress and trauma. We need to put at the back of our minds that even the small things can cause us stress and trauma. Thank you so much for joining us on our third episode. Allow me invite my co-host Jocelyn to just share with us some parting shots.
So what I would say is, as you're going for your regular physical, for your checkup, also do the mental health checkup, rather than just testing for diabetes and malaria and all that, but also do the mental health checkup as well.
That is interesting. So where do we find these tests? You've talked about mental health tests. I would imagine includes the stress test and the trauma test and whatever else may be included in there. Where do we find these tests and where can we do them from?
These tests are found at Fortuna Care. You can come to Uganda House at Friends Polyclinic and seek for an appointment, and you'll have this test done. Help yourself, help your children, help the generation that comes after you, and let's fight this thing called trauma.
Thank you so much, Josephine. This has really been wonderful. I hope you've been blessed as much as I have been blessed by all this information. And I'll just call on you to join us on our next episode, where we're going to be discussing the fact that stress and trauma are not only psychological, but they are also physical. So see you then, and thank you so much for joining us. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and following us on Instagram, TikTok,